More than 50% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. Now all of our food comes from these industrial systems that's been sterilized, and you're not replenishing our microbiology when we're eating the food of these current systems. This is not a future crisis that we need to talk about could happen if I don't drive a hybrid. This is happening right now.
Mollie Engelhart is a regenerative farmer and entrepreneur. Due to heavy regulations in California and fallout from COVID restrictions, she made the difficult decision to uproot her life and restart from scratch in Texas. In this episode, we get an in-depth tour of the Sovereignty Ranch and find out why she believes regenerative agriculture is the best way forward for humans, animals, and the planet.
We can't just depend on rice from China and wheat from Ukraine and lentils from Africa having these hubs of farmers that are growing food for the community. That is real resilience, and that is real security, and that is what I want to bring back.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Mollie Engelhart, such a pleasure to have you back on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, just about a year ago today, we were actually sitting down at a different farm, your farm in California, and you were about to leave to come here to create a new life. So tell me about what you've built here since. I mean, you're someone who kind of goes 150% on whatever you're doing. So, just looking around here, it seems like a lot has happened since you arrived.
So I moved to Texas to 250 acres, and we built a restaurant in the barn. It's called the Barn Restaurant, and it's a 2,500 square foot restaurant that we can use for retreats, for events, and we've built a series of tiny houses, shipping container houses, and some manufactured homes. So we have a series of different configurations for renting for guests, and we're doing retreats, we're doing education, we're doing conferences, anything from a medical conference to we're doing a women's retreat that starts today. All different yoga retreats, any kind of different ways that people are gathering. And I really want to create a place for people to come, eat food of the land, and be on a regenerative farm, see the relationship between their food, the ecosystem, and humanity, and then be the ripple effect and take that out into the world and spread the message of nutrient-dense food and how important that is. And so that's what we're doing here in Texas. And I still have 2 restaurants in California that are struggling, and it's been hard with California and the regulations and the minimum wage hikes and the rent increases and all of those things.
You shifted you evolved in your kind of philosophy of farming or philosophy of food. I've noticed that the farm's called Sovereignty Farm. I'm sure there's a reason for that. But so tell me about that.
I was raised a vegetarian, mostly vegan, but my mom didn't believe in margarine because one time a stick of margarine turned to plastic because she left it in the oven too long, and she was like, ooh, I'm not feeding my kids plastic. So we ate all vegan growing up except for butter. And so I kind of just grew up in this family that believed in not eating animals, and I didn't reject that, and I went on to grow up, and I started my own businesses, and one of my first businesses was a vegan ice cream shop, and then that evolved into Sage, and Sage became this kind of iconic restaurant in Los Angeles and doing huge numbers and big square footage and brewery and full bar and really fun vegan restaurant where you could kind of have everything and not have to worry that there was any meat or dairy. And as I learned about things as far as farming go, I realized that food waste was a big cause of issues, and we don't talk about food waste. We always blame cows. But I didn't have any cows, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I did make tons of food waste, so that's how I started my farm. And as I started farming, I started to realize that maybe the vegan narrative was like so many other narratives where there is kernels of truth, but then it's been co-opted to kind of control and make people do what the powers that be want us to do. And I also started to realize there is no vegan food. All organic food is grown with bone meal. and blood meal and feather meal and chicken poop. And these things are coming out of ecosystems that I don't believe in, because I still deeply believe in animal rights and animal welfare and human rights and human welfare. I deeply believe in those ideas. And so I started to realize that this business model that was really successful prior to the pandemic was a little bit of a lie. That it's not that we can just say, I'm not going to eat meat, and then no death happens. It's literally that to be alive is to have the reverence for death happening. And every time we eat, we want to pray over our food as if you're eating the meat. I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat meat, but I understand that death happened to grow my broccoli, and so I want to have the same reverence I would for a steak, if that makes sense. And so as the restaurants are struggling post-pandemic, like so many other restaurants, and we're saying, how do we get butts in seats? How do we get people to come to the restaurant? I had the thought, maybe this restaurant no longer has integrity with what I believe. I'm now over here farming and doing regenerative agriculture and integrating animals into the ecosystem to create healthy soil, to create healthy food, to create healthy people. Yet I'm still having a restaurant over here that has seed oils, that has some processed foods and things I don't believe in. So I thought, I'm going to try. The restaurants are already shriveling on the vine post-pandemic California, but let me at least try to have integrity with what I believe in the world. So on Earth Day, we made an announcement that essentially what I believe is that regenerative agriculture is the best pathway forward for human health, and planetary health as a secondary thing. But there's a human health epidemic right now, and we can hypothesize about carbon. I don't need to hypothesize about the human health epidemic, that the poisons in our food are having an impact, and more than 50% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. This is not a future crisis that we need to talk about, could happen if I don't drive a hybrid. This is happening right now. And so in that realization, in that thought that regenerative agriculture is a great tool for moving that forward, I made that announcement on Earth Day that we're going to add meat and dairy from regenerative farmers, mostly from California, a couple from Texas, but mostly from California. So local American regenerative farmers, organic and regenerative. And so this is the highest quality, grass-fed, grass-finished, A2 dairy, everything like that. And I believed that sure, the vegans were going to get angry. But I also believe that people that want metabolic health, that want food without poison, we're going to rise up into that space where the vegans came out. And I understand their upset. I was them. Like, the realization that I had to come through was painful. My identity, I'm a vegan chef in Los Angeles, like my financial stability, like everything I believed was on that. And I had to change my mind publicly in the public sphere and have the mob say I'm wrong. And I think that analogy can go to so many things right now in our life. Like, there's so many mobs trying to convince so many people to believe so many things, and we have to be brave enough to say, I believe regenerative agriculture, healthy soil is the best pathway forward for humans, animals, and the planet. Because healthy soil does so many different things. Sequesters carbon, which I'm not that concerned about because plants cycle carbon, but yes, it sequesters carbon. And more organic matter that's in the soil filters water better. So there's going to be cleaner water. It's also going to sequester more water because it's spongy and the water doesn't run off and go into the ocean. It goes down into our aquifers. Then there's all this microbiology that creates the healthiest food on the planet, and then that creates healthy humans, healthy animals. Like, there's no downside to regenerative agriculture. Somewhere between 25 and 50% of all life on the planet, there's been different studies that have come up with different numbers, but let's even just use 25% of life on the planet is in the topsoil of our planet. And so if we have a mass extinction event of that microscopic life, people say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the other interesting thing is healthy soil and a healthy gut have like a 70% crossover of this healthy microbiology. So it's clear that we were meant to eat of the soil to replenish that microbiology. But now all of our food comes from these industrial systems that's been sterilized, and we are not replenishing our microbiology when we're eating the food of these current systems or food-like substances, and we're getting this industrial microbiome, which is causing all types of metabolic dysfunction and also mental health. There's a huge connection between your gut health and your mental health.
Mollie, we're going to take a quick break right now.
Okay.
And we'll be right back. And we're back with Mollie Engelhart, farmer and chef at Sovereignty Ranch. What about the farm itself? What is the farming that's happening here?
So we have a dairy herd of cattle, which we're doing holistic planned grazing, which is a staple in regenerative agriculture where you move the animals every single day. So they don't damage the soil. They're really spreading their microbiology out evenly, and we move them and move them and move them. And so by the end of this year, we'll have our permits for our dairy. We're under construction there, and we'll be selling raw milk as well as pasteurized products here from the farm. We have a pastured pork program. It's more like forested, and we're doing in the forested areas. We have some different heirloom pig varieties that we're growing here, and then we have a small herd of dairy goats right behind us that will also be part of our dairy.
We were hearing them a bit.
Yes, we were hearing them.
Yes.
And they get moved every single day as well, and so do the sheep. So we have sheep, goats, pigs, and cows. And then we also have a beef herd, but it's on leased land. It's not here, but we do the same thing. We move the beef cattle every single day. So we have all that, and then we have greenhouses where we're growing fruits and vegetables. And then I have a beautiful fruit orchard, and we're doing amazing things with using the spaces between the fruit orchards to double use the water and double use the fertilizer. So we're growing popcorn or vegetables between the rows of the pears or the pecans and stuff like that. So we're really a very diverse operation, and we really want to show different kinds of ways that you can stack functions. And just like we did at Sohar on a smaller scale, we're trying to do that on a bigger scale here, really having these different offerings. So if any one thing goes bad, we don't lose everything. You know, if we have a bad hospitality time or we have a bad fig year, we don't want that to be our whole everything is vested in figs or everything in pecans. And we're really doing a lot of experimenting because there's not much agriculture outside of hay and cattle in this region of Texas. And so I'm really experimenting, and I'm interested to see what is going to be thriving and what is not going to be thriving.
Well, I can't wait to see some of this.
I'm excited for you to see some of it as well.
Oh man. Do I ever love fresh figs? This is as fresh as it gets, right?
Fresh as it gets. There's a lot of arguments people have, like, should you get organic? Of course, organic is better than non-organic, but whenever you have a big, huge bureaucracy, there's also ways to manipulate it in your favor. And so knowing your farmer and buying local food is your best bet.
Okay.
Another?
Oh, another. Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna...
Okay, let's go get on the people mover. It was actually illegal in California, so I bought it for really cheap and made it into our safari mobile.
All right. So who rides on this vehicle normally?
Guests, so like we're having 60 women are coming for a conference today, so it'll circle around the ranch throughout the day so they can move from the showers down to the restaurant space, out to their tiny house village, to the pond, to go swimming, to the sauna, and so this circles around. So this is how the holistic planned grazing works for the dairy cows. And so we walk them back, and we just use one
wire. It's
Yeah.
electric. So they have about 11,000 square feet at a time, and we move them twice a day. So this is very, very, very high stock density, but then there's no damage to the field. You can see where they ate yesterday, and this is where they're gonna eat later today. And so we'll just move them across the field until they reach that end, and then we'll start them back on another field over there. This is really the foundation of regenerative agriculture, is to move animals on grass every single day, replicating what buffalo or bison did a long time ago. There used to be millions of bison in these prairie lands, and they would move every day due to predator pressure and due to grass. And so we are just recreating that, and that is what creates the most healthy soil possible. This is our dairy herd, and we're gonna have a raw milk dairy probably by December. It's under construction right now. I think that raw milk is a powerful superfood if it's done right in a clean environment where you really have cooling set up and bulk tanks and everything to get it chilled quickly. And so I think that we want to make milk raw again, but we want to have a system set up for that to work.
Well, yeah, you know, when pasteurization was used, you know, to basically make the milk safe for drinking at a time when you couldn't do these things very well or very effectively, right?
Well, that happened because people were getting sick, but people were not getting sick necessarily from the milk, but from the conditions in which the cows were kept in. We want to go back to having healthy cows on grass in an environment that is meant for a cow, and then harvest that milk in a safe and clean way. I think that that's highly beneficial, because we talked about soil microbiology being 70% compatible with the human gut. Well, raw milk is 94% compatible with the human gut. So it's really setting up that healthy microbiology.
You know, I'm a huge fan of dragonflies, and there's an unbelievable amount of dragonflies around here.
So this
just
is
making my day.
If you have a field of kale or a field of cabbage, there's almost no life in this field. But when you look at this field, you look at all this life, and there's bunny rabbits that we probably can't see, and there's dragonflies and butterflies, and there's dung beetles, and all of this life. It's actually creating more life and more in the ecosystem, and these cows are only any place for just a few hours, and they go on to the next place and the next place. So we're not dismantling anybody's ecosystem, we're actually making it a more healthy ecosystem. So this is a young fruit tree orchard that we planted just 2 years ago, and we tried to plant some popcorn between the rows the first year, and it just didn't work. But this year, after grazing the chickens and getting the fertility of the chickens,
pumpkin or some kind of zucchini,
these are pumpkins, and now we're able to have this beautiful garden between the rows, and that's just from the fertility of the chickens, just grazing chickens between. So this is popcorn. And then these gardens between the young trees are actually protecting them in the heat of the summer. This is aspirating moisture. We're operating like little air conditioners. And so this is popcorn and watermelon and butternut squash. And I mean, the garden's almost as tall as the trees, whereas the first year was here, we couldn't grow anything. And this is without purchasing any outside fertilizer, literally just moving our egg-laying chickens through the orchard to create this
that's
garden.
Fantastic. Are they in here somewhere right now?
Yeah, the chickens are up here at the top.
And here's the little houses where people live.
No, these are the chicken houses. So this will be the fall garden up here where the chickens are now. That's the summer garden, and we'll move these guys into the pecan orchard shortly.
So 350 chickens. Some of them are hiding well.
I must warn you, we feed the chickens meat and skins because chickens are not vegetarians. But because the whole veg-fed chicken thing came from the idea of not feeding chickens to chickens, which of course we shouldn't do. But we get deer and beef offcuts from the butcher. whatever's left over from the meat that we feed the chickens, we're gonna come in this row and we'll flail mow it, get all the grass, whatever they left, and then we'll plant our fall garden into this, and we'll move them further up. And then after they do this again in the upper orchard, we'll move them to the pecan orchard, and we'll continue to plant like that. So the chickens are fertilizing with their poop, and the meat and the bones that's left over is also fertilizing the ground and building healthy soil.
We're getting a real picture of how this regenerative agriculture process works, right?
So this is kind of our tiny house village, kind of starts right about here. And we brought all these tiny houses for California. They made us remove them. They were all farm worker housing originally. And so now we have them. These are tiny houses, and then these are our shipping container village behind you. Just for $5,000, you can get something that's watertight and is sturdy. And so we have 7 tiny houses and 6 glamping tents and 4 shipping containers, and then 3 farmhouses that rent out. So these are all different options for renting.
Can we check out one of them?
Yeah, let's go. So it's a tiny house.
Well, it's a lot cooler in here. You're running air conditioning in here, right?
Yes, for sure. For guests, we have 60 guests arriving today, so all
see.
air conditioning is all over. But we have outdoor
Oh wow, look at this.
bath.
Amazing.
We have an outdoor bath. You can take a shower out here. A bunch more tiny houses.
And so, what is the vision for the future? Because I know you got one.
I would like to continue to grow the conversation around regenerative agriculture in the world. And we're building a brewery as well here. So we're going to try to have the first beer with no pesticides or chemicals in it, because a lot of these pesticides and chemicals are water soluble. So when you make your beer or your kombucha, it ends up in your beverage. And so we're doing that, and we're doing this restaurant, and I hope to get a farm stand on one of the main highways around here soon, and just continue to do the education and do the work of high quality nutrient dense food until that's just a normal thing that everybody's talking about, and then I'll move on to something else. But I really want the understanding of the connection that we have to nature and how powerful we can be and how powerful our purchasing power is, and just inspire people to stop trading our resilience for convenience, and just, beg people to go a little less convenient for a little more resilience.
Well, Mollie Engelhart, it's such a pleasure to have had you on again.
Thank you so much for coming all the way out here to visit us.
Thank you all for joining Mollie Engelhart and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Jan Jekielek.